Scott Drew decided to stay at Baylor instead of going to be the head coach of a blue blood, and now he's got the point guard of a different blue blood.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. It's Tuesday, and it's good to be with you. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me, I should say, at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Want to thank you for making our show your first listen or watch. By the way, a reminder, you can get every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all you everydayers out there, and special shout out to all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, we're just taking a segment and looking at three different schools because they have all been making some moves and grooves in the transfer portal. We're going to start in Waco, Texas with Baylor, and then we're going to go to a pair of Big Ten schools, Indiana and Michigan, who have both been doing work. Before we get to the Baylor conversation between me and Cam Stewart, the host of Locked On Baylor, I need to tell you one note. It was after Cam Stewart and I recorded that Jalen Bridges announced he was off to the NBA. We didn't end up talking about Jalen Bridges, and so there's nothing to cut out, but that's why you don't hear us talk about that news that he is off to the NBA draft. So with that said, let's dive right in. We begin today's show in Waco, Texas, where the big news over the weekend is that Jeremy Roach has officially, I think officially is probably the word we're going for there, committed to Scott Drew, who stayed. The man stayed, and now he's got a haul coming in, headlined by Jeremy Roach. There's more to talk about, but we welcome in Cam Stewart, the host of Locked On Baylor, to discuss the commitment of Jeremy Roach to the Baylor Bears, who folks might not remember, although they should, that Baylor's just 3 seasons removed from a national championship. Are we looking at another potential national champion contender? Cam Stewart, welcome in about this commitment.
Oh, man. Sunday night, I'm just in heaven, Isaac. Like, we kind of knew this was coming from Thursday with the Jeff Goodman tweet that shook Central Texas of, hey, that Baylor is the front runner. And I can't lie to you, it's not even someone I was really thinking of. I thought Baylor would ride with Robert Wright, who they're bringing in as a 4-star, 5-star pass first point guard from Montverde. And that obviously goes against conventional wisdom because you want a guy who's going to be out there 35 minutes a night, and a freshman just usually isn't going to give that to you. So I naively was thinking, boy, Baylor could really use backup point guard. They haven't had one of those the last couple of years, and I think it's really hurt them. And instead they go out and get arguably the best point guard available in Jeremy Roach. And I was banging the drum of, you got a lot of skill on these teams, but haven't had, I think, a ton of leadership, but guys that have been there. And those are very tough to find in college basketball, even in this portal day and age. And what you've got now is a top end point guard, an all ACC point guard who has played in the Final Four, has been a real contributor the 3 years. I mean, started 92 games at Duke, and a guy who can fill it up 14 points a game, shoots at 43% from 3, and can still dish it out. And is a guy who's in top 20 in both defensive box plus minus and defensive win shares in the ACC. So there's even something positive on the other end of the court too. So I look at bringing in someone like Jeremy Roach, and I say, that's the leader of your team next year. I don't care that he wasn't on there this year. This is a guy who has been there and done that at the highest level here in college basketball. And he is one of the guys who is an expectation setter now that he's at Baylor.
Cam, I love what you just said there about his potential as a team leader, because there are some really talented freshmen coming in. If we have time, we'll talk about them today, if not later on this summer, because there's plenty of time to get there. But I think it's so critical to recognize everything you just said about what his on-court game brings to the table. But Cam, what do you like about all that experience you just talked about that he's had in Durham, that, he's been the guy to help bridge the gap from Coach K to John Shire, right? And now he brings all of that experience, all of that locker room capability to Waco. How will Coach Drew be able to rely on Roach for a lot of that leadership?
I think Scott Drew's going to be able to give him the keys to the car here. And he's had no problem doing that with transfer guards, point guards. James Akinjo, the year after they won the national championship, he was a guy who was on his third stop, became an All-American. Ray J. Dennis this last year gave them an all Big 12 performance. There were some limitations to him, but he absolutely had the thing going in the right direction. And so Scott Drew is not afraid to do that. And I think if you are going to pick someone out of that central casting, it is Jeremy Roach. And one thing that it's tough to quantify this kind of thing, but I look at kind of what you said, the bridge between Krzyzewski and Shire. Okay. So this is a guy who is playing the biggest leadership position, point guard, and one of the most pressure-packed programs in all of college basketball at Duke. And is not so that in and of itself is very impressive. I think of a Quinn Cook guy at Duke, right? That's a guy who started over 100 games, very similar kind of player. And so I think of that kind of guy, invaluable. And then I think, boy, he had it in the last year of Krzyzewski and then the first year of John Shire. He had the keys. Like, this is the most pressure-packed position at a pressure-packed program at Duke in a very pressure-packed situation of you're replacing the greatest coach in the history of college basketball. And so all of that, I think, it is tough to quantify, but it can only be looked at as a positive. Like, we think Baylor has the chance, if they add one or two guys to potentially go on another national championship run, just from talent alone. And to know that you have a guy that has been there and done that is just something that is so, so rare to find in the portal. And obviously even more rare to develop. So very, very excited about his leadership skills. It's more so than even the on-court skills, more tangible skills that he's also pretty good at too.
Cam, you just mentioned potentially one or two other guys or whatever it is in the portal. One of those is a young man who was on campus just this past weekend. That's Jonas Aidoo, the transfer portaler out of Tennessee, who is part of that Rick Barnes great defense. What a run they had with Dalton Knecht coming in and changing the face of that offense this year. Sounds like a really productive visit for Aidoo this weekend. He received a crystal ball prediction from Travis Branham of 247 Sports early in the weekend. And all reports, you talked about Jeff Goodman. He noted on, I think it was Sunday night, if I remember correctly, that it sounds like really focusing in Aidoo is on Baylor, on North Carolina, Arkansas, and Alabama. I saw some other just rumor mill stuff, so don't put too much into this, but that kind of looking at a top two of Baylor and Arkansas. And so, Cam, as you look at that and the front court needs for Baylor this season, what do you like about the prospect of Jonas Aidoo?
I think getting a guy like Aidoo in the portal almost rounds out your puzzle. Like that is, I know, there are some big programs that are looking to fix the center position, specifically North Carolina in there as well. So I think having a guy like Jonas Aidoo as an all SEC guy at Tennessee, who can potentially be a double machine for you, like that is a rare breed in the transfer portal. There aren't very many schools that can pull out a guy like that, nor a guy like Jeremy Roach. Baylor has the chance at both of them. And so I think if you add a guy like that, you're potentially talking about potentially a top 5 preseason ranking. Like, I think it's that much talent. Now, it will take some time to click, but Jonas Aidoo is going to give you a lot of what you need. He is a rim runner. He plays in a similar style of offense, at least from the center position between Baylor and Tennessee. He can set high ball screens, pretty good at that, and can get in the dirty areas and get you some rebounds. And that was something Baylor kind of tailed off towards the end of the season, was especially the offensive rebounding game. And when they're at their best, that is what they are really, really good at. So bringing in a Jonas Aidoo, I think, like a Roach, is a perfect addition to your team. And to have basically 2 top 15 transfer portal guys is humongous.
If VJ Edgecombe can come in and do what we think he can do at the 3, for bet, like I really like this roster a lot. I don't care if your name is Chip or Joe or anyone else in Waco, Texas. You should be very excited about the season ahead. As to, by the way, should be the Indiana Hoosiers and everything they're doing in the transfer portal right now. My goodness, it's insane. Anchored by the big man down low and Umar Ballo. We'll look at that and everything Mike Woodson's bringing in coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time. The weather's finally heating up, and that means it's time to go take in some MLB games. And there's great news. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. This is on the Game Time app, in fact, go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I love their last-minute deals feature. Perhaps, for example, you want to go to an NBA playoff game and it's a last-minute whim. No worries. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets, not only for sports, but also concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Also, I often worry about my third-party tickets being bogus, but with the Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. I love that peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to get into betting on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to slam dunks and home runs, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. How about NBA championship odds? Celtics plus 120, Nuggets plus 290, Thunder plus 1,300, Clippers plus 1,400, and rounding out that top five are the Bucks at plus 1,600. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We turn our attention now from the Big 12 over to the Big 10. Numbers just don't mean anything anymore. And we are joined today by the host of Locked On Hoosiers, Mr. Jacob Goins. And Jacob, Indiana has been raiding the No More Pac-12 conference, landing Umar Ballo out of Arizona, Miles Rice from Washington State, and most recently, Kanan Carlisle from Stanford. This is the recruiting haul that Mike Woodson needed, it seems like, to keep his job in good standing. And oh boy, has he done it, Jacob. Welcome in. What do you make of this trio out of the Pac-12?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's good to be back on Locked On College Basketball. You guys are doing just a fantastic job over here. And, you know, I was telling you a little bit before, I did an episode over on Locked On Hoosiers about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it was titled, Mike Woodson's Job Relies on His Transfer Portal Success. And that was not just a take just for fun. I meant it. I really did mean it. And it seems like in the last about 2 weeks or so, really the week and a half, Mike Woodson and this staff have treated it like their jobs relied on it. I mean, you go out and you get 3 top 20 ranked portal players in the country. You're now ranked number 1 in the portal rankings are the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, that says to me that they understood the assignment here, because there were a lot of Hoosiers fans that were a little on edge and were a little upset about Woody being brought back. And it was announced there was a whole big ordeal. And now they've gone out and they've gotten the number 1 player in the class, depending on where you look, the number 10 player in the class, and then the number 18 player in the class. When you can do that and you're still actively pursuing guys as we speak, as this episode comes out, that's a pretty good start in the transfer portal.
I would say so. Congrats to the Hoosiers on that. Now, Jacob, here's the thing. It's we're in a presidential election cycle this year. And so here's then the next step in this. It's one thing to win an election. It's a whole other thing to govern. So the question now becomes, how does Mike Woodson take this group that he's brought in, the guys that he already has, and anybody else that comes in, and put it into practice?
That's really good, man. I may have to steal that. That was good.
You should. You totally should.
Well, it's really important for Mike Woodson this season to prove that he can coach at the college game. And when I say coach, not just get a win here or there, but make the adjustments that are necessary and adjust your coaching style, game plan, and overall strategy based off of the guys that you have on your roster. You bring in Umar Ballo, who is a 7-foot beast, to replace your previous 7-foot guy, Khalil Ware, who's going to the NBA draft. Now, those two guys are completely different in their style of play. Khalil Ware was turn around, fade away with some finesse, right, from about 8 feet away. Ballo's just going to lower his shoulder and power in and going to dunk it on you, right? So you have to adjust for that. Also with Carlisle and with Miles Rice, they're not the shooting type of guards that we were hoping for. I think Indiana's still going after those guys, but they have the ability to be productive with the ball in their hands, something that we just didn't see a whole lot of a year ago with Indiana's guards. And so Woody has to find a way to adjust his offense on what the Hoosiers have. And I think we're going after shooters, which means we have to adjust the offense for that as well, because we had one shooter last year, Isaac, one, and his name was Mackenzie Mbako, which he is coming back, which is huge news as well.
News. That's right.
And so overall, yeah, you can bring in all the talent you want, but if you can't coach them, you can't develop them, and you can't make this team a winning team come March, then it's all for nothing.
And Jacob, I think that's the very logical next point is, as I looked at these additions last week, Andy and I talked about it on the show after the addition. No, I guess it would have been Leaf Tulane and I after the addition of both Ballo and Rice, and said, I love these additions, but does it fit? Does it work in this modern era of basketball where you got to have the shooting that you were just talking about, Jacob? And one place that I did not expect, although it's been kind of rumored lately, is that on Monday, we got the news that Luke Goody from Illinois was entering the transfer portal himself. And the question then becomes, can Indiana go out and grab him? Well, I'm seeing crystal balls pop up all over the place, like almost immediately for Luke Goody. This would be a big time addition because Umar Ballo needs that space to be able to operate inside, and Goody would be a big step in the direction of helping aid that. What are you hearing, if anything, at this point, Jacob? And by the way, we should timestamp this because stuff moves at light speed. So you
better believe it.
We are recording Monday, April 22nd at 6:52 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the year of our Lord 2024. So, Jacob, that said, Luke Goody could be a commit by the time this rolls out on Tuesday. But what do you like about the potential addition of Goody?
Well, hopefully I look like a genius when I say that I think he ends up becoming an Indiana Hoosier, Isaac. I mean, the guy's from Fort Wayne, Indiana, right here in the state. He's a guy that has family ties to Indiana, and he's exactly what the Hoosiers are looking for. He's listed as a guard / forward, but the guy's 6'7". I mean, that's kind of a big guard in my opinion. And so I think you would bring him in to just boost the shooting because it's still not where Indiana fans want it to be. I mentioned Rice and Carlisle a second ago. Those guys are fantastic, and they're going to step in and be your starting 1 and 2 guards, I believe. But the 3-point shooting is not where fans want it to be. I think it can improve. There's no doubt, and they can knock them down at times, but you bring in Goody from Illinois, who shot almost 39% last year in the Big Ten, not just in Power 6 basketball, but right here in our conference. I mean, this is somebody that shot 39% across almost 220 attempts. Like, he knows what he's doing, and he is a proven 3-point shooter. Would he be a starter? No, probably not. But he's somebody off the bench that you can bring in to play valuable minutes, that can knock down shots. And I'm really, really big on this idea, Isaac. When you bring in guys off the bench, you're trying to limit the drop-off between the starters and the bench. You don't want it to be like this, right? For our video watchers, you want it to be very limited, and bringing in somebody like Goody, I think you can limit that, and he can help withstand the offense, continue the offense. And then once you get your starters back there, or as we see a ton, in foul trouble. If somebody gets in foul trouble, you can bring in a 6'7" guy that can get inside, play a little defense, and ultimately knock them down from the outside.
And that's the great thing about Goody is he would obviously bring positional height as well, which is something we're always looking to see. Now, you look at this team and you think about, you mentioned Mackenzie Mbako earlier, who has all the athleticism in the world. Another player that the Hoosiers are in the mix for, along with Kentucky, Arkansas, North Carolina, and a team that I'm leaving out, Pittsburgh, in real time, is Aidoo Thiero, who is transferring out of Kentucky, although maybe staying at Kentucky. You think about the potential athleticism add that Thiero would give and have that paired with Mbako. Man, I know right now it seems like maybe Pittsburgh, maybe North Carolina are the front runners there. But if Indiana could somehow swing that as well, Jacob, what are we talking about there?
You're talking about a dream, man. That's what that would become. And look, I think given what we've already added through the portal, I think that probability has kind of gone away.
I would agree.
I mean, I don't want to put it out there completely and say that it's not going to happen. I don't, you just never know. But that guy is good enough to look for a starting role somewhere. And not that Indiana couldn't start him, but they feel pretty good with what they brought in already.
Yeah.
And you have to also look at it too, where you're looking at NIL stuff where the guy like Thiero who can demand a pretty heavy chunk, and Indiana's paying out a heavy chunk with what they've brought in, plus what they're bringing back. So not that it won't happen. And if Indiana were to make that possible, oh my goodness. I mean, you're already talking about a roster that has become top 25, top 15, I think, in college basketball going into next season. That would boost it even more. But if Hoosier fans are tuned in here, I probably wouldn't get your hopes up.
All right. Well, hopefully Indiana can get things moving back in a really positive direction next year. The funny thing is, here in just a second, we're going to move from a guy that many people thought Indiana should make a move on hiring in Dusty May, who wound up the road in Ann Arbor. Conference rivals, the Wolverines, we're going to talk about them and their recruiting haul. Everyone but Johnell Davis, who can't get in, just like Caleb Love and Terrence Shannon Jr. in years before. We'll get to all that conversation in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or fan. It's halftime, the scoreboard's not looking so great, you're feeling low, you're not sure if your team can pull out a win. But that's when you dig deep, you lift up your head and you say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. You can also charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play Store. On Monday's show, Andy Patton and I discussed how poor Michigan, they just can't get the admissions department out of the way. 2 off seasons ago, it was not being able to enroll Terrence Shannon Jr. Last off season, it was the same thing with Caleb Love. And this year, as we talked about, it's Johnell Davis coming from FAU, trying to play with his former coach, and he can't get in. Man, that is a bummer. But you take that disappointment away, and the Michigan Wolverines are rolling, not just in the transfer portal, but also got recently a high school commit. Just the past 3 days, or I guess 4 days now, as you're listening to or watching this, they have landed from the transfer portal: Sam Walters from Alabama, Danny Wolf from Yale, Trey Donaldson from Auburn, Reuben Jones from North Texas, and Roddy Gale from Ohio State. It truly is a wild time in college athletics when we're doing that. Justin Pippen, out of high school, a 4-star class of 2024 guy, Scotty's son, yes, 6'3" combo guard who plays at Sierra Canyon, which you'll know as where Bronny James went. So, Michigan, I know they didn't get Johnell Davis, but everything else is going really, really well. The most recent pickup is Sam Walters. the Alabama transfer who committed on Monday. Walters chooses Michigan over Ohio State, over Kentucky, Louisville. That's a funny Final Four. Two pairs of rivalries, Ohio State and Michigan, and Kentucky and Louisville. But is a big dude listed at 6'10" on Alabama's roster last year, coming off his freshman year. So he's got 3 years of eligibility left. Didn't play a ton last year just because Alabama had so much talent on their roster. But when he did play, he was doing well. 12.3 minutes, 5.4 points, shot really well from deep. Now I list off all those guys for you that Michigan has coming in. And I just I want you to catch 3 things that really stand out to me about this group of 5 transfers that Dusty May has coming in to Ann Arbor. You ready for this? Number 1, they've almost universally got multiple years of eligibility. So this is not just some one-off, let's get all we can for this year and then we're done. No, listen to this. Sam Walters, as we just said, 3 years of eligibility. Danny Wolf, 2. Trey Donaldson, 2. Roddy Gale, 2. Literally, Reuben Jones is the from North Texas is literally the only incoming transfer that doesn't have multiple years of eligibility. What a luxury that is in this transfer portal era. So Dusty May has an opportunity to not just bring in some mercenaries for 1 year to join him, but set a culture together over the course of his first 2 seasons. Number 2, not only do these guys almost universally have good multiple eligibility, they've also, number 2, almost universally got really good size. Walters and Wolf are more front court players. Donaldson, Gale, Jones, more backcourt players. But listen to these sizes. Sam Walters, 6'10". Danny Wolf, legit 7 foot. Trey Donaldson from Auburn is the shortest of this group at 6'3". Roddy Gale from Ohio State, 6'4", and Reuben Jones, 6'5". So not only is Dusty May going to get these dudes for multiple years, aside from Reuben Jones, he's also going to have a big lineup, right? Like, let's think back to a very recent college basketball game and how important size became as a factor. The national championship game, UConn had all that perimeter size. Purdue couldn't match it. That was a key factor in that game. So multiple years of eligibility and great size. That's awesome. But one other thing, almost universally, all 5 of these transfers have this trait in common. They can pour it in from outside. Listen to these numbers. Sam Walters in his freshman year at Alabama, 39.4% from 3 on 2.7 attempts. Danny Wolf, the big man, 34.5% on 2.6 attempts last year. For his career, he's a 33.6% three-point shooter. That's not setting the world on fire, but when your big man 7-footer can step out and do that, yeah, we'll take that. How about Trey Donaldson from Auburn? This is the dude that the volume hasn't been there yet, but man, the efficiency has. He's 2 years at Auburn, over 40% shooting from 3 both seasons. This year, 41.2% on 1.9 attempts a game. For his career, he's 41% from deep. As he shoots more for Dusty May, will those numbers stay? I mean, heck, even if they fell to 37, you'd still feel like you're in great shape. Roddy Gale from Ohio State. He's had 2 years, one great, his freshman year. Last year, his sophomore year, not as much. His first year shot 42.9% on 1.4 attempts. Last year, way down to 28.4% on 2.8 attempts. So this is an example of where the volume went up. The efficiency came way down. But for his career, he's a 33.1% three-point shooter. And I think the truth of who he is as a shooter is somewhere in that middle, maybe low to mid 30s. And then Reuben Jones from North Texas last season, 41.6% from deep on 3.9 attempts a game. Career, he's a 36.6% three-point shooter. So you see all of this that Dusty May's brought in, guys with multiple years of eligibility, guys with great height and size, and then strong to elite shooters. I'm just going to say this right now. If Dusty May can halfway decently coach this basketball squad, they are going to contend for a Big Ten title. They've got that much coming in. We'll see how it all comes together, because that's key. As Jacob and I were talking about earlier. It's not just about winning an election. It's about how do you govern once you're in office. It's not just about getting all these guys to Ann Arbor. It's how do you coach them and how do you bring them up? We're going to obviously watch that. For Michigan, they lose Doug McDaniel. They lose Terrace Reed to UConn. McDaniel's off to Kansas State, by the way. And so, that's tough. That hurts. So there's a lot of work to do, but I see the possibility for that work to get done. We'll keep eyes and tabs on all this, not just Michigan, but Baylor and Indiana as well. But it seems like, at least on paper, Scott Drew's doing really well in Waco, that Mike Woodson's doing some great stuff in Bloomington, and that Dusty May, in his first offseason on the job, is bringing a bunch of guys to Ann Arbor. So we'll see how it all comes together this fall. As for today, that's it for this episode. If you aren't subscribed to the show on audio and video platforms, do it right now. Super easy to be able to do. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord community, we would love to have you. It's free to join, and the link is in your show notes. All right, y'all. I want to say, as always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.